Welcome to the show, John Gray. It's awesome to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be with you.
So, John, you've done a lot of work on the differences between men and women. And some people have a hard time with this. Is there really a big difference between men and women?
Well, if you look at human beings, that we have so many similarities, but we're all unique and different. And then you get tall people, you get short people, then you get men and you get women. And they're broad categories, but there are some extremely significant differences. We'll start with just that women can make babies and men don't. This is a major, major difference. And it requires a different brain. It requires a different set of hormones. It requires all kinds of different systems to do that. And those systems all regulate stress and happiness and motivation. And so it's different in women and it's different in men. A simple summary of that is that your average man has 30 times more testosterone than your average woman. And this is a huge significance because testosterone for a man is a major motivator because it is the hormone that's known to lower stress in a man's body. So we're always motivated to relax, feel good, be happy. Testosterone is a major factor for men, minor factor for women. And a hormone called oxytocin is the bonding hormone, love hormone, trust hormone, safety hormone, intimacy hormone. Oxytocin is the hormone that lowers stress in women, and it doesn't lower stress in men. It feels good, but it doesn't lower a man's stress. And that's highly significant. And it also lowers testosterone levels in men. Now, it's not that significant unless his testosterones are relatively low, then oxytocin can literally push it down. So this has a lot to do with women's motivations and men's motivations, what makes us feel loved, what makes us feel good. And once we understand some of those differences, it gives us an edge, a new insight on how to understand our partner and how to provide the maximum support for them in those places where there are differences.
That is amazing. One thing that I have heard you talk about is that men want to feel like they can provide for a woman. And I'm curious, as a woman, how can women help men to feel like they're providing for them so they feel that sense of purpose?
Well, let's analyze what that motivation is. That motivation comes, once again, if we look at the biological level where we know the differences exist. And that is whenever a man feels successful in making a difference, or a woman feels successful in providing a solution, providing help, doing something for someone that's significant and meaningful, that gives meaning to your life. We all need that. But however, this act of solving problems, providing solutions, providing support, and then being able to take credit for it. I did that. Look what I've done. Oh, thank you. Look what you did. That act increases testosterone. And so for men, it's very, very vital to constantly sort of get that message that you're a success. And that's a new challenge for men today, because you have to look historically. If you go back way back in thousands of years, men would go out and hunt. They would do dangerous things. They would do difficult things outside the home, which was dangerous, as a way to provide for the family. And that's how a man gained his sense of testosterone. Look how successful I am. Then we shifted into more of an industrial age where it was about money, and men would make the money and men would provide the money. They would go off to work. They'd leave their comfort zone. They go off and do all kinds of coal mines and difficult jobs, painful jobs, jobs they didn't really like, but they did it and they had no problem doing it because it was a means to provide for their family. And so money became this symbol. Making money became the symbol of success in a relationship. And today we have half of couples, the woman is making more money than the man. And so where does the man get that sense of significance? When somebody's hungry and you give them food, they go, wow, you have provided great meaning and purpose for me. You satisfied a big need. But when a woman doesn't need a man that way anymore, what role does a man have? Now, ultimately, by understanding these hormonal differences and historical perspective, as we move into this age of equality, where women and men are both earning money, both providing, what we have to recognize is men still have male physiology. So the truth of the matter is you don't have to fabricate that you need him for something. The more women earn money, it turns out the more stressed they are. Because when you're out there making money, now there's an exception to that. Of course, if you're alone and you're hungry, you go out and make money, you're going to feel much better. However, the hormones being produced are going to be higher levels of testosterone and lower levels of oxytocin for women. So their stress levels will be going up as they go more into the male work world. That's not a problem as long as she looks forward to coming home to an intimate relationship that provides, we might say, super oxytocin. The anticipation of romance, the anticipation of good communication, the anticipation of interaction where you can mutually receive help, give help, and so forth. An equal relationship actually stimulates much higher levels of oxytocin because women need that extra stimulation to balance off the natural increased amount of testosterone or masculine energy, so to speak, in their lives. And this is what we're all heading towards. And this is one of the reasons there's so much challenge in relationships today. 30 years ago, when I was going on the media and talking about this, the big news was the increasing amounts of divorce. Well, we've actually gone way beyond that. The actual first marriage statistics is 50%, just like it was back then.
Oh, divorce has gone even higher. In second marriages, it's above that.
Exactly. In second marriages and third marriages, much higher. However, what is more significant than the increasing amounts of divorce is twice as many people are not getting married. There are twice as many single people compared to married people in the last 30 years. So many people are failing in their relationships, so they don't even want to make a commitment to go further. And this is, it's not seen as, oh, we got in a relationship and we went through this divorce. It's we started dating and we basically went through a divorce before we got married. So this is a reflection of a new challenge. And if I could summarize one of the major causes of that, not the only cause, because everything is interrelated. One of the major causes that is an upsurge in consciousness, an upsurge in self-awareness, an upsurge in spirituality. Those are just different terms for the same thing as far as I'm concerned. The more aware we become of who we truly are. And any parent knows your children are much more conscious than our generation and the previous generation. My grandchildren are so amazingly different and so much more bright, intelligent, aware, conscious of who they are, what they want, very willful as well. So what we have is a growth of consciousness or connection to our authentic self. We all want to be more authentic. The more we become authentic, we're connecting with our spirit. Spirit is androgynous. Spirit is androgynous. It is a balance of masculine and feminine. As I become a spiritual being, I realize I'm not just masculine, but I'm masculine and feminine. But on a physical level, in my body, I still have this thousands of years of evolution as a man, masculine hormones, masculine function, masculine brain, all these different aspects have to be nourished. So we have to integrate this spiritual part with the physical part. And what that means is that when we're off balance, okay, here I am, the spiritual being, and I'm androgynous. I have access to the empathy, the compassion, the sensitivities of my feminine side. And I have also the indifference, the focus, the goal-orientedness, the aggression, the assertiveness of my masculine side. So I've got these two different sides of me that I can access both. When I'm out of balance as a man, I will tend to go too far to the feminine. When a woman is out of balance, which means stressed, when she has access to spirit, she tends to move too far to the masculine. Now, this concept is actually borne out physiologically. If you look at men, when they are under stress, their testosterone converts into estrogen, the female hormone. When women are under stress, estrogen will spike and then testosterone will go up and estrogen will go down. There's actually a reversal of hormones when we're under chronic stress. And that's what's happening today. Now, it's happening both to men and women, but it's happening more to women, as evidenced by research which has shown that when women are in the workplace, their cortisol levels, their stress levels are twice as high as men. Now, men's are high too, women's are twice as high. And when women return home, on average, I'm not saying every woman, but on average, this is done with thousands and thousands of people doing these hormone tests. On average, for women, when they return home, whether they're married or single, returning home after spending 8 hours, 10 hours away from the home, her stress levels will be 4 times higher than the average man, whether he's married or not. So these are like huge, significant challenges. And I like to say that to help men realize, women need us more than ever. Because again, how can we provide? We're coming back to my original point, which is how do women give men the message that they're needed? How do men succeed in providing for women in a world where women don't need men's money or protection as they used to? Because that used to be the easy way for men to feel successful. I protect you. I stand guard for you. I make money for you. I sacrifice for you. But hey, I'm happy to do it. That's a noble man. That's what men's nobility was all about, is self-sacrifice. Now what do we have to learn is how to meet this new emotional need that women have to assist them in coming back to their femininity, coming back to producing more estrogen and more oxytocin. Now, when a man can do that, learns how to do that, and it's a new skill that our generation, nobody knows this skill. We're just learning it. When a man can succeed at providing that support for a woman, it actually brings him back to his masculine energy and strengthens him by knowing how to provide the right kind of support for her, as well as how to provide the right support for himself so he can do that. Likewise, for women, how to learn to ask for support, how to learn to share feelings and open up in a way that will work, how to be a partner in creating romance rather than waiting for him to do it all yourself. These are all new insights and skills that we have to learn. And certainly we have a wonderful time to talk today, but it would be really amiss for me to imply that you can learn this skill in a half an hour. This is something that's affecting millions and millions of people. There is no simple little button to push. It is a lifelong journey of learning something new, so our children will not have to learn it as, be as challenged as us in learning it. And we can create a culture that supports this androgynous nature of men and women while simultaneously, almost paradoxically, supporting women being more feminine and supporting men being more masculine in a new way.
It's interesting because you're making me think of when I taught classes for 3 years, primarily to Latin couples who hadn't been in the United States for very long. And one of my main jobs, to me, it's kind of like what you're talking about, is taking 2 time periods and putting these couples into hyperdrive when they come to the United States, where we're heavily saturated in a culture where, women take on more historically male roles. And a lot of the men were really struggling because in Latin culture, oftentimes we're not taught to be super sensitive to women. We're taught to, take ownership, very masculine traits, provide, take ownership of the woman, take ownership of the home. And then they come over to the United States and women are going, wait, I want to go to school. I want to get a job. I have feelings. I have dreams and I want to pursue them. And the man's kind of scratching his head like, wait, I've just paid the bills. I'm covering everything. Like, shouldn't you be happy? And it seemed like my primary role was teaching these women that it's okay for them to open up and express their emotions, and then teaching men how to receive those emotions without getting offended or upset. Or, the biggest thing I like to say is it's not about you. When a woman is expressing, it's really, if you can set yourself aside and really just hear, hey, I'm hearing that you're upset. Tell me more about it. But it was an incredibly difficult task for many of the men in the classes to get.
I love how you reiterated that the best way for men to provide for women nowadays is really to provide that emotional support, or the support to help them decrease their stress levels. And that's really powerful. Are there any particular tips that you would give, like a one takeaway that people can use to start applying this right away?
Well, I think what Lewis just said is, we'll start there, really the most important aspect. Why? Because the sharing of emotions has proven to be a maximum oxytocin producer. So what happens for women is, and what happens for men, we'll start with men for a moment. In a relationship, if a woman isn't happy, a man feels like he's a failure. When a woman is happy, he feels successful. And so here's this woman who is taking on all these new challenges. But the biggest complaint men have with that, although there is, when you shift cultures to that, there's a certain fear that men will have or resistance to it. But the biggest resistance I see again and again in men to women today is when women are not happy. It's kind of like, hey, if you're unhappy, forget that. Just do this traditional thing to do. And so we kind of come back to that when we see that women aren't happy. And unhappiness is, to a man, when he hears a woman being frustrated or angry or complaining or nagging or feeling, disappointment, and he hears, on a certain emotional level, he feels he has failed. And this is where understanding some of these gender differences between men and women can really, really help. Because for men, when men are experiencing increasing stress, the first reaction a man has is to detach from his emotions. Now, this is biological. This is brain wiring. When the amygdala, which is the fight or flight center in the brain, becomes activated due to potential danger. Okay, so potential danger is there. The brain goes through several stages. Dopamine, which gives you focus and pleasure and motivation, starts turning into adrenaline. Adrenaline eventually then turns into, if it's not used up, it turns into, if you don't solve the problem with your adrenaline, do something about it that's successful, then adrenaline will turn into cortisol. Now, that process of getting to cortisol for a man, the first step when it goes to adrenaline is he detaches from emotions. So he actually becomes indifferent. Now, that's what men do when they're challenged. They disconnect from fear, because if you have fear, it will hold you back from doing something. So men have a direct line from the amygdala, fight or flight center, to the action center of the brain. Women do not. Women have a wiring that goes from the amygdala to the emotional part of the brain to the talking part of the brain. When women are under moderate stress, there's 8 times more blood flow that goes to the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that's the memory. So 8 times of her blood goes to memory, to remember, did this happen before? Who's had happened to? What can we decide about this? It goes into a discussion of, is this the same as it was before? So there's an exploration that wants to be taken in order to bring in support. That's one way of dealing with a problem. If we have a problem, we say, let's talk about it. That's one way. And another way, if we have a problem, let's put out the fire. Let's do something. So men's brains are designed more to, let's jump into doing something. And women's brains are more designed towards, let's talk about it. And when she's in the mode of talking about it, if she can get the words out and articulate them and feel safe doing it, meaning she doesn't have to edit herself too much, but literally explore what's going on inside of her, what will occur is the hormone that calms women gets produced. So suddenly her brain becomes more calm if she's able to talk about what's upsetting her. And this makes no sense to a man, because for a man, if you talk about what's upsetting you, it completely goes against your nature when you say, let's just do something about it. So our instinct as men, when a woman brings up problems, and women are designed to see problems more than men. Men focus more on what's the solution and ignore problems unless you have to do something about it. Women are like, well, this is a problem and this is a problem. And they're not even first thinking, do we have to do something about it? She's just bringing it up. So, there's this complementary energy there. And if I as a man can understand that, then what Lewis was saying, it becomes a bit easier to realize that as a woman, quite often she's just being emotional and talking about what's going on inside of her. And it's not a reflection on men, and it's not permanent. It doesn't have to be fixed. So, what I learned and wrote about this many years ago is because I'd been a therapist. And as a therapist, women would come in and I would listen and ask questions and help them express their feelings. And at the end of the session, in 50 minutes, they would feel better, but nothing had changed in their life. I had not taught them anything. I had not explained how things are going to be different. Every woman practically still to this day, when they come in for counseling, they want to figure out how can I change him? What can I do to get him to change? And of course, they're looking for a solution. Now I have the wisdom to say, we'll get to that. But first, I need to understand your feelings. And that was the dynamic, is if I could get women to feel safe, to express how they feel, it was like a miracle. It didn't make any sense to me at all until I understood the biology. But just by talking about it, she would feel better. Then her brain will start to remember the good things in her life, as opposed to just what the problems are. And then this sort of balance happens. And this is like very important for a man to know. So as Lewis just said, if she's upset and she's talking, don't get defensive. Know that this is short term. Her mood is going to change and she's going to see the positive side soon, but not right away. Because when a woman says, oh, you left that light on, you didn't do this, a man wants to clean it up. He wants to say, yeah, but I made this money and I did this. And who cares about that? And so what he's doing is resisting her emotions rather than knowing that that's just an expression. Let it flow by. Don't take it personally. Realize that she's just processing within herself. And very soon, she's going to be happier again. And this is the dynamic. I call it women are like waves. They rise up. And when they're rising up, it seems like you can do no wrong. She's happy to see you. Little things make her happy. But when that wave is crashing, it's a hormonal cycle that women go through. And it is reality. Women go through changing hormones like this over their 28-day cycle. Men have a 24-hour cycle, which I'll explain in a minute. But women have a 28-day cycle. So those hormones are changing. So at time of fertility, she tends to see only the good. But then it will shift. That wave will come back down and the little things that made her happy, now she'll start noticing little things that are bothering her. All she needs to do is be able to talk about those things and she comes back into balance. And men don't realize that. And so we're always trying to talk her out of her feelings. Therefore, the women's number one complaint today is he doesn't listen. He doesn't understand. And we don't understand. And when we're listening in a way that doesn't work, because we're listening to what's the problem? How do I solve it? Is that really relevant? Is that really true? Let me help you correct your thinking and feeling here. That's not what needs to happen at that time. And then you said a minute ago, the magic word, because Lewis just said it. You kind of go as a man, well, what am I supposed to do? I got to do something. And we do have to do something. So what you do is you don't speak, you ask questions. And at a certain point, you say, I hear you. That's it.
And my question for you is, have you found any really fast way to help men learn this skill? Because as a man, and then just as a human being, when somebody says, something's wrong, something's off, my gut instinct is, oh, I did something. What's going on? But I don't tend to want to ask questions. I tend to feel maybe upset, and it's funny because as you're talking, I think of, one of your seminars, you said, I try to go for an A+. Sometimes I get an A+. And, I was thinking about recently an issue that we had, and she was, bringing up some things that she was upset about. And immediately I said, but I've done all this stuff for you. Don't you feel loved? And I felt, she was talking about feeling like this attention and feeling connected. And it was like, wait, I've made you breakfast. I cleaned the room. I talked about different things that I had done. And, afterwards, looking back on it, it's like, that's not at all what she wanted. She just had feelings and needed to talk about it.
That's exactly right. If men could understand that, you could actually give less in a relationship, but give more of what women are looking for. And the flip side is for women. That's even a more important message for women who are not happy in their relationships. Stop giving so much and start giving him what he would actually like to have, which is a happy wife. Often the major cause of women being unhappy is they feel like I'm giving and giving and giving and not getting back. Well, maybe if you just gave less, you wouldn't feel so much empty. And instead give more what he's looking for, which is messages that he's a good guy, messages that he doesn't have to be perfect to be your hero. I mean, men want to be heroes. And so the unrealistic hero is I have to save today, I have to be world famous, I have to be super rich, I have to be perfect, I have to always make you happy to be your hero. And from a woman's point of view, you don't have to be all that. And I try to explain this to men using an example from my life, which really was one of many examples, but I was speaking to 6,000 people, and rarely does my wife come to my seminars, or my seminars aren't that big, but sometimes I'll do keynotes for different conventions and whatever. So it was a big convention, 6,000 people. My wife happened to be there. She doesn't normally come. And normally she's accosted by people saying, what's it like to be married to John Gray? What's it like to be married to John Gray? She doesn't want to have that question over 100 times. So I said, I'm about to end my talk here, and I'm going to be signing books. So just so nobody has to ask my wife this one question, I'm going to ask her for you, and you can hear the answer. And so I asked my wife to come up on stage. I said, so honey, this is the question that people always ask you. What's it like to be married to John Gray? Would you answer it so you don't have to answer it over and over? And she's shy in front of a big audience. I'm very comfortable. We're different. So she just thinks for a moment and she says, I love him. And I said, honey, they all know you love me. That's not the answer they're looking for. We need some details. And so she pauses and she thinks for a moment. So what's it like to be married to John Gray? And then she says, he tries. and I said, now, man, everybody laughed for a moment. And then I said, this is the most important message you can ever hear. My wife loves me and I'm not perfect, but I try. That's the most important thing. And when I got over that hump a long time ago, because I realized I don't have to be this perfect guy who gives my wife everything to make her happy. I'm not responsible for her happiness. My job, and I'll say that one again, my job, I'm not responsible to make her happy, and I can't make her happy, but I can make her happier. And that's what my job is to help her in her journey of finding her happiness, just like my wife is not responsible for my happiness. But when I'm happy, she can certainly make me happier sometimes. And that's the healthy perspective where we don't look to our partner for everything. And we realize our role is we can't make them happy. But this is men going too far to their female side. This is this androgynous man who cares so much about his wife's happiness. Historically, men did not care that much about their women's happiness. They did care somewhat, and they had their job to provide. But today's man, he really cares a lot. So when she's not happy, he feels failure, beat up, and whatever. His testosterone actually converts into estrogen at that moment. Instead of just adrenaline, his adrenaline now turns into cortisol. His testosterone turns into estrogen. So what we have is men going through this journey over and over and over. You get men in their 50s, their testosterone levels are half what they were when they were young men. Now, I'm in my 60s. My testosterone levels are just what they were when I was a young man, which is true in indigenous cultures. Today, men are deflating. Their testosterone levels are going down. Women are deflating. Their estrogen levels are going down. Their ability to be happy and responsive to a man's efforts goes up when their estrogen levels are at a healthy level. For men, their motivation to try to make a difference, to be that guy when you were dating who was interested in making you happy, that is all linked to good, healthy testosterone levels. But this androgyny, which is sort of the side effect of becoming a more conscious human being, we have to now meet those new challenges. It's like with every step of progress comes a whole new set of problems. So we have to remind ourselves realistically as men, I can't make her happy. And if I don't make her happy, she's still going to love me if I do one thing. And that is make sure she feels safe. What has a man's job been for 1,000,000 years? To provide safety. And now it's no longer safety from the bad guy out there in the world or from the animals in the world, from the lions and tigers. It's to find safety to express what she feels without some man coming in and judging her and criticizing her by telling her, don't feel that, you should feel this. Now every woman will go, yes, I do not want him telling me what to feel. Let him hear what I feel. The flip side of that is women understand that men, we're different. What we don't like the most is a woman telling us what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And that's where women go into trying to offer unsolicited advice to men on how they should behave and what they should do, just as women don't want men to give unsolicited advice on how women should feel. So these are our two different dynamics that are quite big generalizations, but having that perspective helps a lot.
You know, it's interesting as you were talking, I saw Kamala's face. She shifted. I noticed that she relaxed around the thought of, wow, yeah, I love having freedom around expression and being able to say what I feel and just opening up and, as we like to say, opening up into her feminine. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, one of the best takeaways for me from this is I fully agree with you about men helping women to feel safe and how important that is. And that men, just how you distilled it down to men help women feel safe by listening to them, and that women can help the relationship by giving less to the man, giving less of what she thinks he needs and giving more of what he's actually asking for, and giving more to herself so she is happy. That's one of the best things she can do for the relationship. And I'm curious if there is anything that you'd like to offer our audience before we sign off today.
Well, what I'd like to offer the audience is, first thing, is 3 or 4 times a year in California, I do a soulmate seminar. And all they have to do is use the code name Lewis if they call my office, and they will get 10% off. So that's one thing they can always know. Lewis, your name is the magic word. And if they want 10% off, it's a 4-day seminar. And when you ask Lewis about what can men do, we're trying to do our best through our books and our classes and so forth to help men. But those that are able to actually come and take a training for 4 days with me, the exercises that I put men through, it definitely help men recognize this on a cellular level, that our role is to create this safety through being a listener without taking things personally. And for women, learning how to share their emotions in a way where a man doesn't feel attacked or blamed, because there's 2 sides here. And I'll give a short technique there for the women right now, which is when you're talking and you're seeing a guy kind of getting defensive or saying stuff or interrupting you, and don't take that personally, just stop him. And you can stop him right away because he's doing his best. He doesn't realize he's ruining it. Just say, oh, hold on. I just need to talk about my feelings for a little while, and then I'll feel better, really. You don't have to say anything or do anything. Just your presence makes me feel better. And then he goes, oh, that's right. I've got a job to do here. I'll just do that job. So, it's a 2-way street there. And so I do a 4-day training on this for those that can, have the schedule and the opportunity to do it. So one gift I like to give is 10% off if they say Lewis. And another one, if you go to my website, marsvenus.com, you can get a free download of a book. My most recent book is called Staying Focused in a Hyper World, Natural Solutions for ADHD, Memory, and Brain Performance. Now, we haven't talked about that much today, but when I said there's many causes of divorce today, one is this raising of consciousness where we have both the access to the masculine and feminine, and women tend to go too far to their masculine, men tend to go too far to their female. Well, that tendency becomes exaggerated due to the environmental toxicity. And I explain that whole process. In children, it's called ADHD, where children that are kind of active become hyperactive. Children that are sensitive become hypersensitive. Children that are more kind of distracted, playful, they become hyper distracted, playful. And children who are sort of the perfect children become hyper perfect. So nothing is ever good enough. And they're always hard on themselves, and they grow up and they're hard on their partners. They're dissatisfied in life. So this hyper tendency, I explain how that happens. And you can get a free download of that book if you go to marsvenus.com. And if you forget that, you can just put my name in, and marsvenus.com, and a Google search will always come up.
How generous of you. Thank you so much for offering 10% off of your incredible workshops and a free book. That is so generous at marsvenus.com.
And it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show today, John. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. It's been a real delight.
You've been listening to the Thriving Launch podcast. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure to head over to thrivinglaunch.com. We'll see you there.